So we have seen that random sampling can eliminate bias in the choice of a sample from a list of the population. But even with random sampling, there can be problems with samples, and in this section we're going to talk about some of those. The first problem we're going to look at is called undercoverage. And undercoverage occurs when some groups in the population are left out of the process of choosing the sample. So for example, a survey that contacts households using random landline telephone numbers will miss people with only cell phones or with no phone at all. So since more people are switching to only cell phones, this misses a good group of the population, and it's probably especially likely to miss younger people who are more likely to have only cell phones. Another issue is called non-response, and non-response occurs when an individual chosen for the sample can't be contacted or refuses to participate. So again, a survey that contacts households using random telephone numbers might get more refusals from busy people and have more responses from retirees who have more time. Let's look at an example of how bad non-response can be. So the current population survey has the lowest non-response rate of any poll we know. Participants are contacted in person before doing later interviews by phone, and this helps reduce the number of non-responses. But even with these precautions, 4% of people refuse to take part, and 3 to 4% can't be contacted. So that gives us a non-response rate of 7 to 8%, and that's the best and lowest non-response rate that we know of. The non-response rates can be much higher than this. So the Pew Research Center imitated a telephone survey done by a market research firm. In the survey, they called 2,879 households, and of those, 1,658 were either not home, refused to participate, or did not finish the survey. So from that information, we can tell that this survey had a 58% non-response rate. So that is very high and probably not good for reliability of the survey. So part of this problem may be the same as what we saw with voluntary response. Even though the people are randomly selected here, they still have to choose whether they want to participate in the survey. Another thing to think about is respondent honesty. We know that people don't always tell the truth, and in particular, people are more likely to tell an interviewer what they think they want to hear. So for example, if an interviewer is giving a survey as customers leave a store, and they're asking if the customer noticed a particular sign or display, the customer may say yes or exaggerate how much they noticed the display because they think it will make the interviewer happier, and part of this could be on a subconscious level. Another issue is that people may not give truthful responses to questions that are sensitive or personal in nature. So when you're giving a survey, we have to find ways to minimize these problems. Let's look at one example of encouraging honesty. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, used to rely on face-to-face interviews to ask Americans about their sexual activity and illegal drug use. So being face-to-face, people are less likely to be truthful about these sensitive issues. In a newer version of the survey, data was gathered using computer-assisted self-interviews. So this means that the people who were taking the survey were put in a room by themselves with a computer that had the questions for the survey on it. By not requiring people to give answers to another human being, this made them more comfortable with giving honest answers to the survey questions. Finally, a problem that can come up in surveys is the wording of questions. Asking a question in different ways can get different responses. In particular, we have to worry about the connotations of words. So if we use words with positive connotations in a question, this makes people more likely to give positive responses. If words with negative connotations are used, this encourages people to give negative responses. In addition to the words you use, you have to worry about other questions in the survey having an effect on answers to later questions. So for example, if a survey has these two questions, it first asked, do you consider yourself to be conservative, liberal, or moderate? And then asked, do you support the legalization of same-sex marriage? The answer a person gives to the first question might have some influence on the answer they give to the second question. So if a person is undecided about same-sex marriage, but in the first question they identified themselves as either conservative or liberal, they may think, well, I've put myself in this box, so maybe I should be on this side of the issue, even though they're not really decided. So let's look at some examples of that in the real world. So one question that a survey looked at is, how do Americans feel about government help for the poor? And two different surveys looked at this issue using different wording. For the first survey, they asked if people think we are spending too much on assistance to the poor. And 13% of people responded that they thought we were spending too much on assistance to the poor. Notice that assistance to the poor sounds pretty positive. Another survey asked if people think we are spending too much on welfare, and 44% of people thought that we were spending too much on welfare. So welfare has a more negative connotation, and a lot more people thought that we were spending too much on welfare than on assistance to the poor, even though those could be considered asking about the same thing. Another current issue is Scottish independence. So there's a movement in Scotland to become independent from England, and two different surveys asked about how people felt about this movement. The first asked if people would vote for independence for Scotland, and 51% of people said that they would vote for that. The second survey asked if people would support an independent Scotland separate from the United Kingdom, and only 34% of people said that they would support that. So adding in that phrase, separate from the United Kingdom, makes it sound a little bit more negative, makes it sound more like they're breaking ties that they currently have, so it changes people's response a little bit. So that finishes up this section. Things you should know. You should be able to identify potential problems with sample surveys, which include undercoverage, non-response, respondent honesty, and the wording of questions.